Welcome, everyone, to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I'm your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real life stories on growing professionally and personally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Stefanie McCarthy. Stephanie has been a social worker for the past 27 years. She received her master's degree in social work from Temple University in 1995. She has worked in the mental health field, nonprofit organizations, private school sector, and has spent the last 22 years working in the public school system in Winslow Township, New Jersey. She's been working in a variety of roles, serving as a vital part of the child study team, homeless liaison, counseling at risk youth, and anti bullying specialist and crisis counselor for all ages from elementary school to high school populations. Stephanie is a dedicated yogi, practicing Bikram yoga for the past 15 years. She also practices Inferno Hot Pilates and has been an instructor for the past year and a half, as well as a health coach. Stephanie received her health coach certification from the Integrative Institute of Nutrition. You could find Stephanie on Instagram at healthyself4444. Hello, Stephanie. It's fantastic having you on the show. To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Stephanie McCarthy?
You so much for having me. So excited to be here. Um, so, when I think of success, I instantaneously go inward, which I think is interesting because I think most people attribute success with their career and finances. And for me, it just automatically became something internal, how I feel successfully in my mindset, emotionally, physically, and what I do professionally, of course. But I am in a place in my life where I'm measuring success on how I feel and what I give back out.
And that's a great key point right there, how you feel. Because if you're not happy, then how are you supposed to be the best self you can be at the same time? So,
Exactly.
Stephanie, you graduated high school and went into college. What was your college path like, and what made you go into social work?
I grew up in Cherry Hill and graduated high school and went to college like everybody else. You graduate high school and you go through the journey of getting into college. And I went to a very small school to start. And just leaving home and having that experience was, I guess the biggest adjustment. I wasn't always the best student, so I was just looking to get an education and went liberal arts for the beginning. I had a very, very, very good time in college my freshman year. So good that my parents said, "You're having too good of a time. And if you don't get it together, you're coming home." And I did not get it together. I was on academic probation, and my father sat me down and said, "You can live here. Everything else is up to you. We're done." And brought me home after my freshman year of college. So I was pretty much forced to get myself together, and I got three jobs and paid for community college and had to figure out my life. And it was sort of a rock bottom for me. And I did so and ended up transferring to Rutgers in New Brunswick and lost a year of college pretty much in the works. And then I finished with a bachelor's degree in psychology from Rutgers, pretty much worked my whole way through college, had gotten the partying out of the way my freshman year. Um, I always knew that I wanted to be in the helping profession. And I guess psychology was just kind of safe. I did fluctuate back and forth between business and liberal arts and education for a little bit, and ultimately did a BA in psychology and knew that I needed to stay right in school So applied for graduate school right after college and ended up at Temple for a 2-year program for my master's in social work.
I think that was the key point you just brought up too is you knew yourself. You knew that you had to stay in school, and if you didn't, you were gonna go down a different path, and a lot of individuals that I've encountered, they hit that moment of realization, whether it's, "I need to go out and get that experience and then potentially come back," or no, I gotta keep going or life's gonna get a hold of me and I'm never going to return. So I think that's a key point wherever you are in your life is understanding whether, you need that break or you have to keep going. Because if you don't know yourself in that way, what ends up happening is 5, 10 years, you look back and it's like, oh, I should have done this.
Mhm.
And now
Absolutely.
now life's got you. Now you're too busy, you don't feel the same momentum anymore, you don't feel the same, so you just never do it. So that being said, what when you knew throughout your life that you need to keep going or stopping, what was that reflection process like for you?
Well, I think you're bringing up a good point. I reflecting now, I look back and say, I think we're just kind of, what's the word? We're like led to follow a script. Like you go to high school. When you're in high school, you start looking at college. You go to college if you know you want to go to college, right? Not everybody knows if they want to go to college. When you're in college, you figure out you're in another self discovery. You're in your early 20s. You're trying to figure out who you are. Relationships are changing and ebbing and flowing. And because of my experience, right, because I was the only one that was home my sophomore year of college, my friends are all going back to college. And I had a personal experience that was, low. My experience was very different. And I knew because of my experience what worked for me. And I feel like if you don't have an experience, then it doesn't take you to the next level. So my college experience was very different than others because I had already gotten so much out of the way. I knew that I was determined to get a degree. And somewhere during that path, I knew that I needed a graduate degree to do what I wanted to do, which was counseling and some form of social work. And then graduate school became another self exploration. And that journey just keeps flowing as I get older. So I think when you begin to discover parts of yourself, it usually is based on personal experience or someone else close to you whose experience you can empathize or be compassionate about to kind of make those decisions for yourself, like kind of the saying, live and learn.
I think that's important, the live and learn or who to listen to in your close circle and who to kind of not listen to. And sometimes it's those moments of your friend can be telling you one thing 20,000 different ways or 20,000 different times, and you're not ready to hear it. And once you hear it or experience it yourself, maybe something they've been telling you, like, don't do, and you've now done it, you look back and say, okay, how can I change this? This isn't what I want, or vice versa. When you have clients who know students who are coming in and you're seeing them struggling or debating points in their life, how do you kind of guide individuals to make the best choices for themselves? And what advice do you have?
And it's also a difficult one. I think um, if you look at each student or client or whatever individual that I work with and whatever the capacity is and the number of roles that I've done, it's just kind of looking solely at the individual. For some, it's just a matter of being present, providing a safe space, especially in the school system, knowing that there is someone that is available to them. I would say a majority of the time in the school setting, that is what they really need is just knowing that there's a safe place to go someone that will validate and listen, where they can be supportive. And it depends on the age. Outside of the school system in a more intensive environment, it becomes an opportunity to just guide them where they feel they need to be, as opposed to what I think that they need to be. So you learn about different approaches, different clinical approaches, and my approach is just about being where the person is, whether they're 5 or whether they're 18. And obviously, it varies based on behaviors. And I think I just have a natural ability to kind of just, I give off an energy that helps them to get there, if that makes sense. And it isn't the same answer in general for everyone, because everyone is unique and different in their own way.
And I think that was a key point you brought up is having that energy that makes someone feel that it's okay to talk, to open up, to share when they're ready and what they want and know they're not going to be judged. Whether that's through body language
Mhm.
or tone of voice, I think that's really important for individuals to know, whether it's a friend, a family member, anyone of any age, or a client or an employee. If you don't have the body language or self-awareness to have that open line and make them someone feel comfortable, then they're not going to be comfortable and they're not going to share and it's not going to help them. It's just going to shut the conversation down.
General, if you think about what you just said, it's like that with everything. It doesn't even have to be in a setting where something's wrong. Like any interaction you have with anyone that you come in contact, if you just give off an energy or a presence about yourself that makes them feel comfortable, then in any kind of interaction, a business interaction, in a podcast, in a teaching facility, in a phone call, then you give out, you get back what you give. And in some situations, especially in social work, with kids that are really troubled and behavioral, they don't have that mindset. They don't have the ability, the cognitive ability to look at things like that. And it really has forced me to kind of, I think, reflect back on the things that I can empathize with based on personal experience, and then things that I have to use my tools, that I was trained in, so to speak.
Stephanie, working with so many individuals and of over the years, different ages, different backgrounds, and different challenges and stories, how have you stayed centered to navigate and guide each student or individual, especially when you can be putting out fire after fire throughout the day?
Amazing question. So I wish I would have known it sooner, but it definitely is self care and lots of it. And it's very trendy right now. I think self care is very, like, you hear it everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. It's all over social media. Everyone is proclaiming it. But when you really break down the two words, it really is what it is supposed to be, and it's just how you define it. And early on in my career, everything was about my career. So I was literally mentally and physically bringing home and carrying the weight of my students, which were at the time so incredibly severe and challenging. And you have to learn how to establish boundaries. And I think as I grew as an individual, both personally and professionally, you have to take care of yourself. And like we said in the very beginning, I can't give the best version of myself if I'm not constantly looking at what is the best, how do I get to be the best version of myself? And yoga has really given me the opportunity to serve so many different places in my life, and it's done many different things for me across my career and my personal and professional life, that it becomes a form of self-care. But whatever that looks like for you, for me, it's movement and breath, for sure.
One thing you brought up is setting boundaries, which can be harder for some individuals than others. What tools and recommendations would you have for someone to help them make sure they're setting the boundaries they need?
Well, so setting boundaries is really challenging, and you have to understand them and you have to know what they are. And truthfully, the only way you learn how to do that is to be guided with somebody that can help you do that, whether it's, your close circle or lots of therapy and counseling. And being in the field, you're surrounded by it and you get, the supervision. But I always had to be on the other side. If I was going to be a clinician or a therapist or social worker or a coach or whatever it is, I needed to know what it was like to be a client. So I put myself in therapy so that I know what it was like on the other side. Establishing boundaries starts with being able to say the word no. And whatever that looks like for you, but a lot of people don't know what no is or how to use it. So I start there. And it could just be no, I don't want to go out to dinner, or no, I don't want to drive right now. Um, and then identifying what it feels like when you say, use your voice and you say something that you don't want to do. It's just that simple, setting a boundary. And you can do it with a 5-year-old and you can do it with a 25-year-old. So it's always a work in progress, setting boundaries, and they're constant. They need to change over time. But once you get the feeling of what happens when you set a boundary that's important to you, you most likely don't want to go back.
And I think you brought up a key point. It starts with no, but it's also just as important as knowing what no means to you. No might not be a full no, I'm not doing this. It might be no, I'm not going to spend 3 hours on a Zoom call. I'll spend an hour. You want to go out tonight? It's not, yeah, let's go out to dinner, a bar, X, Y, and Z afterwards. We'll go to dinner. And that's what you have to be able to decide for yourself, as well as saying, and being able and comfortable, kind of like you mentioned before, not just saying no, but expressing to the people in your circle what no means and when you've hit those limits of I'm not mentally.
Exactly. And then it does. It translate into, yes, I can, and I have a voice, and this is what it feels like when I use my voice. And then that translate into, I'm taking care of myself. So you start to plant the seeds kind of with the boundary setting, and then what does that feel like? And then what do I want to do with that? And this feels really good. And that also can be internalized as or perceived as an act of self care. It's really difficult and it doesn't come easy. And I think that part of what, because of my own ability to establish it in many different ways in all my roles as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, as a sister, as a coach, as a teacher, as a social worker, is to be able to know what my boundaries are to take care of myself so I can be a better version of myself.
And
And
I
I'm
think
passionate about it.
and you could definitely see that, and I think it helps make everyone else feel comfortable around you when you are passionate about it, but you're very transparent with it. I think
Mhm.
when you're transparent with it is the difference between someone being like, "Whoa, what's going on?" and, "Okay, I understand." And that can change relationships just as much. The transparency versus just saying no, or the tone in it as well. And how do you navigate that?
That's a tough question. In navigating it is a good choice of words. I think that being in environments that are healthy, are finding those environments that are healthy, help you to help me to be more transparent. Um, I'm reflecting now that you say that, in an environment that hasn't always been so healthy, like a work environment, transparency isn't always easy or safe. And I am able to, I have a pretty good sense of my surroundings and where I am comfortable. And that's when the boundaries have to be imposed again. So I think it's, there are things you can and cannot control, work environments that you're in until the environment changes. Um, and I know where to be transparent. I know where I'm comfortable, where I'm safe. I've had experiences where it's backfired, and I'm at a stage in my life right now where I'll know and trust where I can and cannot share parts of me and who will benefit from that. But it also leads to authenticity.
And I think that's a key point too, is knowing when to share and when not to. Because like you said, it backfired for you occasionally. And I feel like sometimes it could backfire for anyone and you don't fully know until you do it what the outcome could be. So
Exactly.
in those times when it has backfired from you, walking away from that situation, how have you felt or kind of evaluated it?
It's a learning experience. It's a learning experience that helps you grow. I mean, you can sit there and, feel bad for yourself and give yourself um, and guilt and beat yourself up over a decision. But at the end of the day, ultimately, I think it becomes a teachable moment and you learn from it. And it goes back to what I said, if you can take a look at all the areas in your life that you have had experiences and get just one thing from that experience, it leads you in the direction in your path. As long as you're, as long as I am, being authentic and true to myself and taking really good care of myself in order to give myself appropriate amount of time to say I shouldn't have done that and then keep it moving.
And how do you stay authentic to yourself?
Mm.
What do you do to make sure you're continuing your authenticity no matter the setting you're in?
I think it's just being really honest and in touch with myself, everything from my mind to my body to, you know, spiritually knowing what feels good and giving that gift to myself every single day, because when you experience a feeling of, personal bliss, so to speak, authenticity, like knowing that it feels so good just to be who you are and working so hard to get there. And it's not easy, it's never easy, right? There's battles, there's struggles. Why would you want to go back? Like that's what just keeps me moving forward. Like I don't ever want to go back. And I know what I need to do, and it's not always easy. And I know who to lean in on and where I need to go. I keep myself really healthy in my mind and my body. Really, really healthy.
So, Stephanie, you were diagnosed with thyroid cancer about 2 years ago and you have had half of your thyroid removed. How has that impacted your life and inspired you over the years?
So it was really shocking. I'm not gonna lie. Like I make a very long story short, had like a noticeable lump on my neck that we've looked at, and they're like, you have nodules, no big deal. Not no big deal, like we're gonna monitor them, everything was fine. And then it got increasingly large, and several people had mentioned it to me, like out of care, like stuff, like that bump. So long story short, I had it biopsied. Biopsy came back funky. They're like, you need to they wanted to have my whole thyroid removed. I was like, why am I going to take out my whole thyroid if only half of it's not working? I fought with the doctors. We went for half the thyroid and just to take out the lump. So we took out the lump and you get that biopsied. And I was like, all right, I'm good. And recovery was tough. I'm not going to lie. Recovery was tough. I had my neck sliced open. It is the most vulnerable part. You don't realize how much you use your throat area until you can't use it. Um, and then it came back with cancer, both cancers actually, follicular and I forget the other one. And I was just completely shocked. And I was like, this isn't real. Um, a lots of information gathering and factual, getting my facts and speaking to a lot of different people. Again, I was encouraged to take out the other side of my thyroid. And I was like, nope, until you tell me it's not working, let's keep it moving. And I just healed and gave myself what I needed to heal, which was move and breathe and sweat in the hot room at a very slow pace. And I educated myself. And I am still 2 years with no thyroid medication at all. My numbers are great. I just graduated to 6 month visits as opposed to 3 month visits. My endocrinologist and I fight, but she listens to me. Um, and I think it just motivated me to become more aware of your body and what it's capable of doing and to advocate for yourself and trust, lots of trust with your medical team. And I was able to show my daughters, like, you can do anything.
And there's many key points in there that I want to touch upon. Some of them you brought up is advocating for yourself and
Hmm.
knowing when to do that. And what was the journey when the doctor, said, let's take out both? And you sat there and were like, started arguing with them. And throughout your care, knew when to kind of step in and say, no, this is not what I want. Let's evaluate it this way. Let's move forward. What are the other options? How what was the journey like saying no and knowing when to advocate for yourself instead of listening to an expert, someone in the field, whether it's a physician or in other areas? How do you know when to advocate for yourself? And what was that journey like?
It was an exhausting journey. And I'm listening to you ask the question, and I'm like, I can feel my body kind of revisiting those emotions. So it was exhausting. There was a lot of fear. It was overwhelming because I spoke to probably 3 or 4 different doctors that all specialize in the area. And listen, I'm not minimizing thyroid cancer at all. Everyone will say, or you'll hear, and it's been said to me, oh, it's the best cancer to have. There's no best cancer to have. I I wasn't afraid of cancer. Wanted to, I'm so in touch with my body. I wanted to understand what was happening and I wanted to make the choices. My kids were afraid. My husband was completely supportive. My family was very involved and they know how I can be. I just really gave myself the time to listen to my gut and let it be a process like everything else. Like when they say, when my other thyroid or if my other thyroid craps out, then it'll crap out. And if it has to come out, it'll come out. And if I need medication, I'll go on medication. But for right now, what I'm doing is working until you tell me otherwise. And so it's the same way I do life. Like until you tell me there is a reason to be another way or have another experience, I'm going to go with what feels right, which is another way that I lead my life with authenticity.
And I think that's important too, is knowing what feels right to you. Experts, whether it's in medical care and painting your house, they are an expert. But just because they're an expert does not mean they know the ins and outs of every individual or everything's the same. We see that every day, that think no two things are the same. So how can care or painting a house, just looking at a room, be like, this is what you need to do? Sometimes it's taking those extra steps. And like you had mentioned earlier, being responsive and being open to having those conversations, because sometimes those conversations lead to a better outcome that could have like changed the projection of your life or, just walking in a house that has a different color on the wall can be refreshing to you every day than being unhappy.
It really is true. It's just, it was another opportunity while it was very challenging. And I didn't feel good. Recovery was very, very long and physically challenging. Um, I was so determined to, break through. And while you're experiencing a number of emotions, your body changes, when you're heavy with emotion. Um, but I, but I knew that I could do it. And I was just reinforced that I would be able to make a decision that I felt good about and allow myself to go through the process, you know, maybe on edge or nervous that it was going to come back every biopsy, every doctor's appointment that she saw something. But I know I'm doing everything I can. And at the end of the day, I'm trusting myself.
And I think that's a key point. Trust yourself. If, as long as you trust yourself, you can be happy or okay with whatever the outcome is because you know you tried it, you did it. And sometimes that can be the difference when looking back and reflecting on a situation. It's saying, well, I did what I wanted to do, and this was the outcome. And sometimes it's not always okay, yeah, I'm happy with the outcome or I'm okay with it,
Right, right. It's
but
not always the answer you want.
at least then you're looking back and saying, "I did what I want." So whatever the outcome is, I I've experienced it and I knew that's what the projection was, and now it's time to pivot and let's try something different. So when you've had those moments of having to pivot or change directions in throughout your life, personally and professionally, how have you reacted to those moments?
I mean, I feel that everything happens for, I do hate saying it, but I feel like, it's so cliche. Everything happens for a reason. And I struggle with that. I definitely struggle with everything happens for a reason. And I will tell you why, because I don't understand why people have to go through difficult times and pain to understand why something happened. But I trust that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be and that my path is directed there for a reason. So I kind of rephrase those words, but it is, that same cliche, everything happens for a reason. My reaction is, not why is this happening to me? It's what is this trying to teach me? I have it on my board in work. I tell it to anyone that, internalizes why me. It's happening because it's trying to teach you something. And I am able at this stage of my life to say, okay, bring it on, let's go. And then I find a different direction to put that energy. And that's part of, where I'm at today.
Stephanie, that was not your only medical journey that you have had over the years. Let's backtrack some years now. And I understand you struggled with infertility and the loss prior to having your twins. You have two great twins who are 17 years old. And it's a difficult story for anyone to go through, but it has a happy ending because you have two great girls. Can you share a little bit about that experience and what it was like for you?
And that experience for me pretty much shaped a lot of, it will always be a part of me because it happened to me. And it wasn't until, the gift of my twins that I was able to say, what is this trying to teach me? Because I truthfully wish infertility and loss on no one. It's brutal. It's not happening just to me. It's happening to my husband. It's happening to my parents and to my sister and anyone that's close to me. I spent many years going through infertility. I saw pretty much every doctor in New Jersey and without answers. And in the process of going through infertility, had several losses. And My first pregnancy before the girls was a very late loss at 5 months. And it was just a very long, incredibly long process without getting into specifics. And then it was a few more years until after that I had the girl. So a big chunk of my life was devoted to getting pregnant, having a loss, trying to get pregnant again. And it consumed a lot of my life in my early 30s. And I, the happy ending is that we were doubly blessed with my girls who will be 17 in a few weeks, Hannah and Chloe. And um, I think that it really gave me strength that I wouldn't necessarily have if I didn't go through what I went through. It really helped our marriage, believe it or not. We were like, if we can do this, we can do anything. And every hurdle that we have gotten through, as parents is goes back to what we went through, suffering, every month. Was I pregnant, and was the pregnancy going to last? And the tragic loss very late. And so it just is a part of me that I can share and say, again, yes, I can. I can. I did. And I don't wish it on anybody, but for some reason, it was my story to tell. And here I am. And there have been many people that I have seen, struggling, that when I do share my story, which I know at the time is right, going back to that time and place of being transparent, they wouldn't know unless I shared it with them, and just helping them to understand that they're not alone. Um, and it just, actually, every birthday of my girls, I reflect on what it took me to bring them into the world.
And I think you hit on a few key points. The strength that those losses and that journey took you, the blessing you got at the end of that journey of your 2 twin girls, and continually remembering that journey and seeing what the outcome was and honoring that journey on their birthday, like you said, I think brings the ultimate strength, because no matter your situation in life, sometimes you don't have a choice. There's a plan that's being played and you got doubly blessed, and you have to sometimes go through that and stay strong and understand. I think something to divert a little bit here that you brought up earlier that is interesting, that not maybe everyone will look at in the moment, is that you realized you weren't the only one going through the loss, whether it's a child loss, infertility issues, loss of a grandparent or a parent in different stages of life. Sometimes it's hard to be like, this isn't I'm not the only one going through this at that time. So, how during that process and after, what was it like for you to say, okay, it's not just happening to me, and how can we move forward together as a unit?
Know if I ever really looked at it like that, to be honest. I think it, as I'm listening to you, like hear my words back. I'm also saying, like, I'm not even sure I identify with that, who I was at that stage, because it was traumatic, and trauma forces us to be in a different presence. And I also don't want to revisit those emotions. So I just focus on the strength that got me through, if that makes sense. I'm not sure that I really looked at it as getting over it, or like, I think it's just deep ingrained in a piece of me, because it was so long ago. And there's something always that reminds me that I had that experience and made it through. but it's not all, but it's always about the strength for me. It's not about the pain and suffering, if that makes sense.
No, that makes 100% sense. So let's divert a little bit. You have 2 teenage girls right now in your household. Over the years, raising twins and working with students of all ages, how has that played a role in how you raise your daughters?
I think it's definitely challenging. I do get a lot of mommy, don't therapize me, or, don't give me your counseling stuff. And I think it becomes separating, that I'm not their therapist or their counselor or like, their coach or and be like more of a cheerleader. It's exhausting. It's challenging. I think the greatest challenge for me is that raising teenagers triggers your own stuff. And so parenting has been, especially of girls who are dealing with what they're dealing with at 16 and 17, 15, middle school to high school. It's like you are sort of can, and I have been, reliving um, things through their eyes that are bringing up my stuff in my childhood. So it really forces you to dig deep and find out where you can pull the strength from, which is why, self care and moving my body and breathing and practicing yoga gives me that grounding to be in touch with what's happening because it can be very depleting.
And I think
It's
that's a
probably the
key.
hard. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go, you go.
I just sense it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
And I
Definitely
think
the hardest thing.
and I think that's a key point you brought up is, you know, keeping when you relive it sometimes, you're on a journey with your kids. You want them to have their own perspective, their own things. But as a parent, you're reliving certain things. And sometimes reliving it can be beneficial because you're like, don't do what I did. Um, you hear that a lot from parents. You don't want to make the mistakes I did. You want to grow from that. So that being said, you brought up staying centered and healthy and not just mentally, but physically throughout talking today. So you teach hot Pilates at Yoga Revive in Marlton, New Jersey, and the Zen Den in Margate, New Jersey. How has that transition been from being a social worker and teaching yoga and you're really combining both ends of mental health and physical health into one. So
Mhm.
what has that been like?
Oh my God, life changing. I mean, it's just been life changing. It just happened again. It just happened. It was one of those things that just fell into my lap and was organic and authentic. And I was like, this is where I need to be. Um, the transition was seamless, it was easy, and it literally brings me to life and it helps me to be all the things that I need to be and then some. Um, and I think it's been gigantic for me in the sense that we keep evolving and this is another chapter. And I can take my experiences of social work and the helping profession and making a difference into the hot room, give back that mindset piece while moving our body, which is an added bonus and helps me at the same time. So, like, everybody benefits. And it truly is, happening at exactly. I always say, I wonder why I didn't do this sooner. And the answer is because I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
And I think a key point you brought up there was everyone's continuing to grow and evolve, and things can change, and that's okay. So, what has, when you've been evolving, that process been like for you to make sure that it's continuously still healthy for you and you're doing the right things to grow in a positive way?
That's a good question. I I think I have to really go inward and just check myself. My greatest, I don't want to say challenge, but what shows up for me a lot is that I'm projecting how to be authentic and helping other people to be the best version of themselves through breath, through movement, through focusing on things that their body could do that they didn't think that they could do, and motivating them emotionally and physically. I have to make sure that I'm doing that for myself, because if I'm not, then it doesn't feel authentic. And then I go right back down the rabbit hole that we've talked about, in my personal experiences. So it just forces me to stay really true, because I feel like I'm not going to put it out there in the universe if I'm not doing it. I can't be self-sabotaging or, not give myself what I need if I'm expecting other people to do it.
And I think that's a key point, leading by example. How
Totally.
how can you expect others to do something if you're not showing that it can be done or that you're doing it as well? So how have you made sure you lead by example throughout your life?
I really just, at this point, I'm just listening to my body and giving it what it needs and what that looks like for me. And so, what that looks like for me is, movement. Um, I practice every day some form of yoga or hot Pilates in the hot room, or I walk. I am a retired runner, and running did provide me with that, like, rounding outside. So I still need that outside, like with nature. But there's something about showing up on my mat every day that gives me what I think I need. And then sometimes other stuff shows up. And I just allow myself to visit that on a daily basis. I also, want to take care of myself so that I can take care of my family. And it just right now is what works. I also stay hydrated and nourished. All the things that everyone around the world is listening to about being healthy and eating clean and all of those things. And I'm not minimizing them because they are important. But for me, and the way I teach and the way that I coach and the way that I counsel comes down to, those things: movement, hydration, nourishment, and breath, no matter how you look at it.
And I think that's a key point is knowing what those tools are for you, whether it's running outside, being in touch with nature, getting on that mat, or is it in the gym every day and getting it
Right.
out in the gym? Is it reading a book? Those
Right.
are the tools you need to self reflect on in order to grow and stay healthy mentally and physically. Stephanie, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, you can always find me at Yoga Revive. I am there a lot, which is in Marlton. And you can reach me at Instagram at Healthy Self 4444. And the email is healthyself4444 at gmail.com. And I would love to hear from anyone that has any questions or and wants to talk anything.
Thank you, Stephanie, for all your insight today. A few key takeaways from today's conversation include give positive energy. When you give that positive energy will also come back to you. Self love, it's key, and it also is key on how you define it. Establish boundaries. It is okay to say no and say no at different points and revisit it. Continuously change those boundaries if that's what you need. It doesn't have to be a one all be all. And change the way you look at things. Change the why me mentality to it's teaching me. What is it teaching me? And self evolution is okay and it's going to continue to happen. This was a great episode with our top notch guest, Stefanie McCarthy. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.
having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank That was great. Awesome.
Thank you. So good. Good segues. Really good segues.
Thank
Really,
you.
really good. Really
I
good.
I think altogether